Good day. In 1588, Spain invaded England. Yes, the English were recalcitrant, they became Protestant, and they left the Catholic faith. And the Spanish king, Philip II, felt that he should bring England back into the fold of the Catholic faith. So he assembled 130 ships. It's known in history as the Spanish Armada. And he set sail and went to England to go and conquer them. The queen then was Queen Elizabeth I. He didn't succeed. He was thwarted by British tactics, English tactics then, but most notably, he was thwarted by the weather. There was a storm, and it scattered the Spanish fleet all around. It made their campaign very difficult, and they lost resoundingly. In 1815, too, Napoleon faced a combined team of the British, the Dutch, the Belgians, and the Germans at a battlefield called Waterloo. He had laid out his plan very well, but a day before the battle was to start, it rained. It rained very heavily. And the French, they had predominance in artillery. But because it rained, the soil became boggy, soggy, and the tactics of Napoleon was not fully implemented. He couldn't do it. The rain played a significant part in the defeat of Napoleon in the Battle of Waterloo. So sometimes, despite the best laid out plans, some unintended events happen. In February of 2022, from the 4th of February to the 20th of February, there was a Winter Olympics in Beijing, and President Putin took part in that Olympics. In fact, the Americans and a large part of the Western world did their best to boycott that particular Olympics. It was a stellar Olympics for the Chinese. They won a whole haul of medals, but something significant happened in that event. President Xi Jinping and President Putin came to an agreement that China will take a neutral stand in any event or in any action that Putin and the Russian state takes. 2 days after the Olympics, the Russians launched the special military operations. And over the course of these special military operations, the Chinese have become the preeminent backbone of the Russian state as it prosecutes this war. Nobody foresaw that happening. The Chinese have become the pillar of the Russian economy, buying up a vast amount of their hydrocarbon assets, but they have also become the biggest source of consumer goods to replace that was lost when the Western world sanctioned Russia and moved away from the Russian economy. Good day and welcome to my channel, Ebima Amungo's Perspective on Global Affairs. If you're new to this channel, please subscribe. If you have any comments regarding the opinions I expressed in this video, please put them in the comment section. Do well to like and share. Events happen at a time and at a pace, and events happen sometimes that thwart the best laid out plans. And nobody foresaw that a relationship between China and Russia will create a resilient bulwark for the Russian state as it faced the collective rout, the full rout of the collective West, the G7 and the United States, after it launched a special military operation against Ukraine, because in the way it saw it, in its own explanation, Ukraine was making itself available to NATO and making itself accessible for the eastward expansion of NATO to so close neighboring states like Ukraine. The Russians said they won't have it. That is their excuse, and that is the excuse they have always maintained. And since that operation, Russia has not only annexed Ukraine, because annexed 5 oblasts in Ukraine, they have annexed 4 since the special military operation, including Crimea that was taken in 2014. They've continued and they are continuing to take more territory in Ukraine. Today, 24th of August, was actually the independence celebration of Ukraine, and President Zelensky had a powerful speech in the square, Maidan Square, where the coup that removed the president in 2014, the Russian-leaning president then, Viktor Yanukovych, there he had a speech, and there he stated firmly that Ukraine will get back Crimea, Ukraine will get back Zaporozhye, Ukraine will get back Luhansk, Donetsk, and Kherson. Ukraine will win back all its territories. It's just a matter of time. That is what he said. It may be important for us to get a clear idea of the territory that Ukraine has lost since this war began. I think I got that one wrong there. Yeah, they've lost quite a lot of territory. I think I got okay. This is it, yeah. And we see vast amounts of the Ukrainians have already got most parts of Luhansk. They've gotten over 70% of Donetsk. They've gotten about 60% of Zaporozhye and Kherson and Crimea. The Russians had already taken Crimea in 2014, and this is where it is now. The battle line and the line of contact is still far out. Russia is saying that for them to start and freeze this war, they would want the Ukrainians to leave the parts of Kherson and Zaporozhye and Donetsk that they have not already won. The Ukrainians are defiant, and they are defiant with the full support of their European backers. But the backers of Ukraine are not just European. Today, while he was making his speech, he made his speech, and in that speech there, he actually had the presence of the Canadian Prime Minister, and not only that, he also gave Kit Kellogg, the American special representative of Donald Trump, who is the special representative for Ukraine, he gave him a national honor in Ukraine. So it is not the last we are going to hear of this war. President Zelensky is defiant. He says that Ukraine will continue to fight this war. Ukraine will win this war. He was very assertive in the fact that Ukraine will win the war and Ukraine will gain back its territories. Now we find out that President Putin, after having gained the benefit of the intervention of the Chinese, or the non-intervention, is very ironical. You will say that the non-intervention of the Chinese has benefited the Russians a lot. Today, it emerged that already this has been a long-term plan. Putin will be leaving to go and spend 4 days, his longest time he will spend in China. He does have a number of activities. First, they will be taking part in the Shanghai Cooperation Organization meeting, a 2-day meeting that will also have a near mini summit of BRICS, because they are expected to have the Indian Prime Minister, and they're also expected to have prime ministers, presidents, and leaders of the countries of the Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, all those countries of that neighborhood that neighbors China and Russia. So the Shanghai Cooperation Organization will also possibly include Pakistan, and it will be a testy one for the Indians. The Indians, though, need to attend that event, and they will. The Indians have become a new strong partner of Russia. Russia is edging its bet, is edging because close relationship between Russia and China is not the norm. It's an exception. They have a long history of antagonism between each other, but at this point in time, they have learned from the playbook of the Europeans, which is there's no permanent enemy, just permanent interest. In this time, the interest of Russia and the interest of China have a commonality. But Russia also remembers that it should keep its options open. It knows that it should make friends not only in China and lean heavily in China and have a dependency on China. So it has a very good relationship with India. That relationship is one that has started from the Soviet Union, where India was a major buyer of military hardware from the Soviet, and now they continue to buy from the Russians. India doesn't have options. China is an adversary in their own reality, the way they look at it, because they have a border issue. And through Russia, they continue to want to have better relationship with China, or Russia is their intermediary between the two countries. President Xi Jinping and President Modi will also be meeting in this meeting. President Putin will play a prominent role during the September 3rd, when they will be hosting the 80th anniversary of Japan's surrender in the World War. Japan was a common foe of both Russia, the Soviet Union, and China. Japan was very powerful foe then. Japan is responsible for quite a lot of death of the Chinese because they needed the materials and the minerals that they took up in Manchuria. So they are celebrating this event now and the opportunity to cement and strengthen their relationship, show the Western world that the interest and the plans to undermine Russia is not going to work. China, nobody foresaw China. China is that intervention that nobody saw coming. China has become the second biggest economy and the biggest economy by PPP measures, the biggest manufacturing exporter in the world. And China has helped Russia create an alternative pathway regarding payments for its trade. They now trade between each other, a cumulative trade of $250 billion last year, 2024. The Russians, in stopping trade with the Europeans, abruptly lost a market that was mutually beneficial to both EU and Russia to the tune of 258 billion. The Chinese have taken that. China buys quite a lot of gas and quite a lot of hydrocarbon oil from Russia, but also it's a two-way street. China now provides them with machinery, which were the main components of trade between EU and the Russians, machinery and automobile. The Chinese have filled that gap, and even chemicals, because the Chinese are also preeminent manufacturers or producers of fertilizer. The Russians too produce fertilizer, but the Europeans still use the Chinese to produce the intermediate and the chemicals that power a lot of the Russian industrial complex. That trade has become such a bulwark for the Russians now that it is a very important both to the Chinese and the Russians. The Russians, though, the Chinese, though, have options. They are the king of the supply chains. They make sure that even though they continue to have their oil from Russia, they expanded it to have oil from Iran, and they still buy oil from other countries in the Middle East. The Chinese don't want to find themselves in the place and the situation that the European Union found itself, where it had just one primary supplier of its gas and its oil, and that was Russia. But while Zelensky is saying that he will hang on, they will get back their territories, Sergei Lavrov, the prime minister, the foreign minister of Russia, said that Russia's interest is not Ukrainian territory. It's the fact that the Ukrainians who speak Russian were not finding Ukraine a comfortable place to live in. Laws were promulgated against them. They were not allowed to speak their language, their Russian language, and it is for this, and they were bombed. There was a campaign since 2014, a brutal one, started by the former prime minister of Ukraine. He bombed the Donbass, he called them terrorists, and there was a campaign against them. And this is one of the points that led to the intervention of the Russians. We should know that attacks on civilians and was by a government was the reason that NATO replaced or attacked Libya. They used that excuse to attack Libya. They used that excuse to attack Yugoslavia, and they also used that excuse to attack Serbia. They used it to bomb Syria. And this time around, the Russians used it. That same principle that the NATO had used severally in many theaters of war, they used it now to defend the people of the Donetsk, the Donbass, and of Donbass, and the Russian-speaking territories within the eastern part of Ukraine. So he was saying they are not interested in, Lavrov was telling NBC that they are not interested in, because Lavrov was interviewed extensively on NBC, and he made clarification on certain things. Like one, he said there was no planned meeting between Zelensky and Putin, and that Russia doesn't need the territories of Ukraine because Russia is already the biggest country in the world by miles, and this special military operation, by his own reckoning, is one that was just to go and protect the interests and the peoples, or the Russian-speaking peoples, including those who even practice the Russian Orthodox religion that are being persecuted in Ukraine. Meanwhile, something very interesting happened while the speech was going on. President Zelensky, reference was made to the fact that the pipeline that supplies oil to Ukraine, to Hungary, has been hit and destroyed by Ukrainian drones. We are at a period where two major events are happening. A Ukrainian was arrested in Italy the other day, a few days back, and he was accused of leading the group that destroyed and blew up the Nord Stream pipeline. That process is going, and the prosecution is hoping to extradite him to Germany to explain. The Germans continue to say that it was a Ukrainian special forces team that did that. Seymour Hersh, meanwhile, the American journalist, has said that it had the whole planning and works of the CIA, and it was an American operation. The Germans insist it was a Ukrainian one, and they fingered this Ukrainian man, caught him in Italy, and he has been extradited. The process of persecuting him in Germany has started. The Nord Stream pipeline was a major cleavage. It was one that just showed that the Europeans should stop their dependency on Russian gas. But Hungary and Slovakia have continued that dependency, and Hungary and Slovakia found themselves now at the receiving end because they have been the most resilient and the most dogged opponents of this war at a time that the European Union and the countries of Europe have been very, very pro-war, hawkish about the war, especially the British, the Germans, and the French. The forming of coalition against an opponent is not new. We see it all the time. And as this war is going on, the new reality has come up as President Trump is calling for peace. President Trump is saying peace and peace and peace because the war is taking a big toll, not only on the American economy, which he doesn't want to fund it anymore because it's bleeding a lot of resources, and there's no prospect of the Americans winning this war or the West collectively winning the war. So he wants out. The war has affected Germany very, very, very hard. The the German Chancellor Friedrich Merz the other day was saying that the German economy is going through a serious structural crisis, not just a temporary weakness. He is acknowledging the fact that the country's economy is back on track, and it will not be very easy for it to be back on track. It will take a long time for it to get to being on a healthy economy again. He's trying to stimulate borrowing so that there will be a lot of economic activity. But Germany has become very uncompetitive, especially because of the high oil prices and gas and the energy cost in Germany at a time that China has become the preeminent producer of energy through many means. Their energy security is so assured. They are continuing to invest in it. The per capita usage of energy is one of the highest in the world, and the price of energy is well over 1/5 of that in Germany. So German companies are relocating to China by choice, while they are relocating to America by prompting through the policies of Trump. So Germany is in big trouble, and this war is not one that it's going to end. Today, we also saw that the realization of where Germany, of where Europe is, because it's not just a German problem. The economic headwinds that are blowing across Europe is affecting Britain. Britain is also moving towards a recession. Italy, and now we see demonstrations where they are looking for retribution. They're looking at immigrants. They're looking at every other person to blame apart from themselves. President Putin has said that he has no problems with the West. He just says that the problem is the Western elites who, for their own reasons and their own, mainly most times these reasons are economic, have decided to make Russia an enemy. They've made an enemy out of Russia. The people of Europe are demonstrating. The choices they're making now are one that aligns, that shows clearly that they want peace with Russia. The AfD, the National Front, and the fact that even Giorgia Meloni is the Prime Minister of Italy is a reflection of that fact that the choices that the European people want in their leadership is totally different from that they're getting now in Britain, in Romania, in France, and all these other countries. They really want out of this war because the reality of recession is blowing them in the face. The British and the French and the Germans now don't know how to, they don't have the options. They have lost their ability to manufacture. They have lost their ability to create wealth as they used to. And they may now be facing a situation where they can't generate enough revenue, and they will also lose the ability to sustain social programs, which has been one of the bulwarks of European society. Now we see a situation where China has become a major competitor. China has created a reality that is giving succor to quite a lot of countries. Germany is now in a big dilemma, whether if they should become partners with the Chinese. Already many German firms, because policy may be done by government, but government is usually directed by businesses. BASF has moved, Volkswagen, all the German companies, industrial concerns are making big investments in China. The relationship between China and Germany is one that has created the industrial reality that we see in China today, because while the Chinese were good at making toys, their movement up the value chain to making automotive cars, to making robots, to make it all was due to the investments of German companies. We should not forget that the Germans invested heavily, profited heavily from China. They never foresaw the fact that China would become a competitor. And it just happened before their eyes. The solar industry started in Germany. They had a large one, but the Chinese have taken it. The automobile industry was one preeminent industry that they had. They were comfortable. They will continue to control. Volkswagen was selling 4 million cars in China. Audi was selling a vast amount of cars. Porsche, BMW, Mercedes. But now they are losing market share to the Chinese cars. Not only that, the horror of seeing huge BYD ships delivering lots and lots of electric vehicles to Hamburg, making it bringing competition that they did not see. And they can't stop it, because if they dare retaliate and the Chinese retaliate against them, the one market where they have a lifeline will be taken away from them. The Chinese have also known that they have the power in their market. The same way Trump is leveraging on the large market that America presents, is the same way that the Chinese realize that they too have a large market, especially for Europe, that is being squeezed by America. And it is a reality now that is confusing the Europeans. They don't know. They are caught between a rock and a hard place. And this Ukraine war is one that is totally challenging. Nobody foresaw the role China will play and India and all the countries of the BRICS that maintain diplomatic relationship with Russia, defeated all attempts to isolate Russia, and created new markets for Russian goods, especially fertilizer, wheat, grains, agricultural goods. The Russians went full blown into taking themselves and their produce out all over the world. Europe may have been a very good friend and ally, but when the going gets tough, the tough gets going. Russia found new market for wheat in Africa, Nigeria, Egypt, Namibia, all over the countries of Africa became big importers of Russian wheat. Same thing to with fertilizer. Same thing to now, the Russians are exporting atomic energy know-how. They're helping countries build nuclear plants, and they just are unrelenting. Every day, one delegation, Russian delegation, is in one country or the other. And just the other day, the Russian Flag Day was celebrated in more countries across the world than many people will believe. In Africa, quite a number of countries celebrated the Flag Day. In Europe, in South America, they celebrated Russian Flag Day. This is not a country that is being isolated. It's a country that has found out that there's a bigger world out there than Western Europe. That is what the Chinese found out long ago. Because when Huawei was selling their kit and their phones, they weren't selling them in America or in Europe. They became the world's largest producers of phones by selling them in Latin America, India, in Southeast Asia, and Africa. There's a large market out there. And the Europeans are coming to that realization that though they can do all they want to damage Russia, it has not been as effective. They cannot force the issue as they've always forced the issue before. And this upcoming meeting between Xi Jinping and President Putin will be one that will not make them happy in the least. So nobody foresaw it, just like how the weather affected the Spanish Armada, the weather affected Napoleon, the unintended and unseen realities of the world, the growth and the rise of China, the rise of BRICS was one that the West did not factor in as they were making their assumptions of how they will give a crushing blow to the Russian ruble, destroy the Russian economy, and defeat Putin and break up Russia into small parts as Kaja Kallas wants. Nobody saw the role that BRICS, the South countries, Mali, Burkina Faso, Venezuela, Iran, and ultimately India and China will play. This is where I end my video for today. If you're new to my channel, please subscribe. If you think that President Zelensky is very going to get Crimea back, get Zaporozhye back, if you think he has there's validity in this is aspiration or this is statement, put it in the comment section. Whatever it is you think about the Putin and Xi Jinping meeting coming up, put it also in the comment section. Do well to like and share. Until I see you in my next video. Goodbye.